Hello everyone, this is Randy and this is another video, and I've kind of got the idea from Jeff at Calico Silver, and he decided to take some of the different threads and contests and pick out the questions he liked the best and make a video. And I'm doing a little bit similar to that. I'll leave a link down below for his channel and his video, which included some questions of mine, which I liked, and thank you. But Glen Kellaway recently showed off his Tom Waits collection, which I don't know if he intended it to be a thread, but I thought I would show my Tom Waits collection. And Elliott Crews had a video where he said, "Just stop here," where he would take an artist and show the essentials from the collection for those who didn't want to buy everything in the collection, which actually would be very hard for me because I tend to buy everything if I like an artist. Heck, I even bought Cut the Crap by The Clash, so if that's any indication. But anyway, I thought I'd start out by showing my Tom Waits collection. And the first thing I'm going to show is a couple that aren't Tom Waits. One of them is by the artist John Hammond, who's a blues guitarist. And for those who really can't take Tom Waits' voice, this is a really good place to experience his songwriting, which he's a great songwriter. You can see some of the tracks that are on this one. And he also worked some with Tom Waits as well, with John Hammond. And another one I'm going to show, it's called A New Coat of Paint, The Songs of Tom Waits. And I really slip my glasses on, I always do this. It's got a couple wild vocalists, which I guess they figured would go pretty well with Tom Waits, and Screamin' Jay Hawkins and Andre Williams, but it also has some other artists with Floyd Dixon, Nico Case, who was in the New Pornographers, and Lee Rocker from the Stray Cats is on here. But it's a decent collection of his songs. And first of all, I'll get into my first introduction to Tom Waits. I had a roommate that had some Tom Waits albums when I was in college, and I can just remember hearing the song Somewhere from West Side Story, which Tom Waits sung with that gravelly, hoarse voice. Somewhere there's a place for. I'm like, I can't do Tom Waits, it'll ruin my voice probably. But, and his voice, he smoked a lot, and so I don't know if that was a contributor, but his voice seemed to get more and more hoarse and gravelly and rough. And he started out kind of a crooner. Someone described it as going from, I can't think of his name. Hoagy Carmichael. From going from Hoagy Carmichael to Howlin' Wolf. It was the progression of his voice. But anyway, the first album he released was in 1973. It was Closing Time. And for some reason, I cannot find my CD copy of that. I've looked everywhere. I know I have it. But that was his first album, and it's a really good starting point. He was more of a kind of a lounge with strings and guitar, strings and piano, and kind of a lounge singer, like, in a way, about the downtrodden and that kind of thing, and telling tales of the downtrodden and lovelorn. But I have that one, but I don't have that one. But anyway, so the second one was from 1974, and it's The Heart of Saturday Night, with some great songs on here: New Coat of Paint, San Diego Serenade, Fumbling with the Blues, Southside Johnny and Asbury Jukes do a couple of those songs, Depot, Depot, but really some great songs on the second album, just like his first album. And then the third one is a live album that he did called Nighthawks at the Diner. And he's in a small venue, kind of telling stories, and kind of still has that crooning lounge singer with little jazz influences on there. It's really cool. Emotional Weather Report is a really nice one to hear. Eggs and Sausage in a Cadillac with Susan Mitchelson is a wonderful one. Better Off Without a Wife, Warm Beer and Cold Women. He even does a Big Joe and the Phantom 309, which was a Red Foley? No, the other Red. Can't think of his name. Anyway, Red Sovine. But anyway, this is the Nighthawks at the Diner. The next one, and probably my favorite Tom Waits album, is from 1976, is Small Change. This has maybe my favorite Tom Waits song, Tom Trobot's Blues, Four Sheets to the Wind in Copenhagen, I Wish It Was in New Orleans, The Piano Has Been Drinking, which I think Glenn referenced him singing that on Fernwood Tonight, the talk show, and them being flummoxed about his performance. And Invitation to the Blues, a wonderful song, I Can't Wait to Get Off Work, Bad Liver and a Broken Heart. Some really great songs on Small Change. Next one is from 1977, and that's Foreign Affairs. It's got Cindy's Waltz, Muriel, Burma Shave, which is kind of a unique song. A Sight for Sore Eyes. Really, another really good album. Foreign Affair, Tom Waits. The next one from 1978 is Blue Valentine. And it's got the heartbreaking song, Kentucky Avenue, that you just have to hear. It's wonderful. This is the album that has Somewhere from West Side Story with that unique voice. Christmas Card from a Hooker in Minneapolis is also a wonderful Tom Waits song. But the Blue Valentine, he's still kind of in that same mode with a little gravelly, more of a gravel voice. And then the next one is from 1980. This is really the first album I bought by Tom Waits, and it's Heart Attack and Vine. Because I saw him sing on the Nickel, on the David Letterman show. And I loved that version, so poignant and about, the downtrodden, the poverty and homelessness, and just kind of a hobo lullaby is what I would call it, on the Nickel. And Heart Attack and Vine is very good as well. Till the Money Runs Out. And Jersey Girl, which Springsteen covered. But wonderful album, Heart Attack and Vine is my introduction to Tom Waits. It's the first album I bought by him. Next, from 1982, was a soundtrack album which featured Tom Waits and Crystal Gayle. One from the Heart, which was directed by Francis Ford Coppola. The Wages of Love have Tom Waits and Crystal Gayle singing together, but it's a really good album with both of them. And after that, in 1983, was when all things changed. He kind of got rid of the strings and the piano and substituted for kind of found instruments, a lot more bass and horns and percussion and more of a wild vocal style. And what ushered that in is this album, Swordfish Trombones, and it's a classic. And you can see some of the songs on here. Soldier's Things, Shore Leave. Shore Leave, John Hammond does a great version of that on his album. 16 Shells from a 30-06. Town with No Cheer is wonderful, so is In the Neighborhood. Two more kind of ballads. He still did some ballads, which he did on this one as well. And the next one after that, 1985, is Rain Dogs. Another classic. You know, he's still in that same type of music. You know, he sprinkles some ballads in there, like if I can find, "Hang Down Your Head," "Anywhere I Lay My Head," "Anywhere I Lay My Head." But it's also got "Singapore," "Clap Hands," "Jockey Full of Bourbon," but on with his new style, and that's Rain Dogs, which is another. He had like a three-album greatness in here, which was Swordfish Trombones, Rain Dogs, and this one, Frank's Wild Years. Kind of gives a carnival atmosphere on some of these songs. Kind of a drunken lullabies, I would call them. But Hang On to St. Christopher, Straight to the Top, Blow and Blow, More Than Rain. That was driving to lunch with a coworker, and I happened to have this album in the CD player, and he heard More Than Rain. When I heard Somewhere is the version of the West Side Story song, I go, who is that? But when he heard this More Than Rain song, it was more, what the heck is that? was his reaction, which some people will have on Tom Waits, but I've always find him interesting. Frank's Wild Years. Next, in 1988, was another live album. And this one was basically those last three albums I were talking about. It makes up most of this music. There's not a lot of chatter in between, like in Nighthawks at the Diner, which is kind of a disappointment because he is very funny. If you've ever seen him on David Letterman or any of the other talk shows he's been on, he's pretty jocular. And next one is Tom Waits' The Early Years, which came out in 1991. And this is basically some demos before he made his first album. And some of them do appear on that album, as well as a few others on other albums as well. But it's really kind of a neat look into his songwriting style in the early years. And probably not essential for those who aren't huge Tom Waits fans, but it's kind of an interesting one. There. I guess there's a volume 2, which I do not have, I found out. And the next one from 1990. Yeah, shoot, I don't remember what year this came out. And I cannot read it. 1992. 1992, and that is Night on Earth, which is a Jim Jarmusch film, which he used Tom Waits as an actor in a couple of his movies, I know. Kathleen Brennan and Tom Waits wrote all the songs for this, and as well as some instrumentals. But this is very good too, and I guess the movie is very good, but I haven't watched it. I just bought my first Jim Jarmusch movie entitled Mystery Train, which he is not in. I know he's in Down by Law, which I haven't watched yet either, but Night on Earth, soundtrack album that he worked on. Next is from from 1992. I can't read this on here. Sorry about that. Kind of lost my place. I didn't write this one down, but it's from 1992, and that's Tom Waits' Bone Machine, which is another kind of a harsh, maybe not as accessible as probably some of his other albums, although he's got Murder in the Red Barn, Whistle Down the Wind. That's a really good song. I don't want to grow up. Oh, that's a pretty good accessible song. But a lot of these are like the Earth Died Screaming are pretty hard for the uninitiated, I think. But I think it's a really good album. Bone Machine. Next, from 1993, probably my least favorite Tom Waits album, and it was going to be a stage play. He was a big fan of Kurt Weill, who wrote the Three Penny Opera, and I think he was going to play the devil, and he worked with William Burroughs on this. William Burroughs helped write some of the songs, and it's called The Black Rider. Doesn't really work, I don't think, but interesting, but probably my least favorite of Tom Waits' albums. Then right after that, he did a classic album, which is Mule Variations. And works with some great artists on this one. Charlie Musselwhite, Les Claypool, and John Hammond worked on it as well. And Come On Up to the House is one of my favorite all-time songs, not just Tom Waits. And Chocolate Jesus, another great song, but if, I can't think of the names, Joe Bonamassa and Beth Hart do a great version of that song. Big in Japan, Get Behind the Mule, Take It With Me, Filipino Box Spring Hog. Picture in a Frame is another great ballad on here, but this is a wonderful album, Mule Variations, Tom Waits. And then he did the Springsteen thing where Springsteen released Get Lucky and Human Touch at the same time, but these are a little bit better, I think, I really do like Get Lucky from Bruce Springsteen, but not as much Human Touch, although I don't think it's as bad as some people make out, but he released two at the same time, Blood Money and Alice, and I think these are both wonderful albums as well. Kind of kept in the same thing of some, outrageous songs with different instruments, and then some, nice ballads they wrote with Kathleen Brennan. But I don't know if they're married. I know they're together, but Kathleen Brennan. But anyway, Tom Waits, two at the same time, Two for Your Money. And then the next one, 2004, a little bit less accessible, just like the Bone Machine. You have to hear Don't Go Into That Barn. It's a pretty crazy one. Hoist That Rag is very good. Shake It, but it's, like I said, it's not as accessible for those uninitiated with Tom Waits. I would not start here. but real good. And then he released an album that I really love, and it's a 3 CD set of odds and ends, things that he had not released before, called Orphans, Brawlers, Ballers, and Bastards, which are the names of each of the CDs that he uses in this collection. And just has some, you can see a lot of the songs that, just like Springsteen and I guess Elvis Costello, a lot of songs that didn't make it on our albums are still wonderful songs, and this is a wonderful collection of those. And in 2009, he released this live album, Glitter and Doom, which has a lot of his later recordings. It's a 2 CD set, but on the second CD is basically just him telling anecdotes and humorous stories for 30 minutes. But, I don't know anybody else in concert that could probably get away with that, but without people yelling for another song. But Tom Waits can kind of hold your attention. And then the last one I'm going to show is from 2011, and it's the last album he did, and that's been 9 years. And that's Bad As Me, which this is the deluxe edition, comes with a booklet and an extra CD of 3 extra songs that aren't on the regular album. But Chicago's great. I saw him do Raised Right Men on David Letterman, and it's just an amazing song that you'll have to hear. Hell Broke Loose is really good too. But like I said, this is in his later period that some people will have to get used to. Helping him on this one was Keith Richards worked on this one, as well as David Hidalgo of Los Lobos, and Augie Meyer, who was in Sir Douglas Quintet and Texas Tornadoes on the organ. Really wonderful album. Too bad that he hasn't done anything. I don't know if this is going to be his last one or not, but that is basically my Tom Waits collection. So I'll link Glen Kellaway's video for his Tom Waits collection down below, and also Elliott Crews' video for Just Stop Here, which to get the basics of an artist, and if you don't need to get the whole collection unless you're really a big fan of, which I usually get the whole collection, but that's just me. But anyway, so I'll start off with Tom Waits. He's got a couple different periods in his career, and the first one was the lounge singer, just him and the piano, a few jazz instruments, some strings. And for those who loved that period, which I did, I'd start off probably with Nighthawks at the Diner. I think it's a wonderful place to start. And you get to hear him just, kibitzing with the crowd and telling little stories and singing some beautiful songs, of the lovelorn and the downtrodden, but that's where I'd start. I'd start with Nighthawks at the Diner, and then I would also go to Small Change, which is my favorite Tom Waits album, and it has a lot of his classics that a lot of people love, like Jitterbug Boy and Tom Trobut's Blues and Invitation to the Blues. Then it also has kind of his fun side with Pasties and a G-String at the 2 o'clock club, which is kind of shows Tom Waits what he was like back in those days. And then the next 2 I would show were from the period where he changed things up. He was no longer that lounge singer like that. He was experimenting with a lot of different instruments, using a lot more horns, like I said, and bass and everything. And I would go with Swordfish Trombones, the album that made the shift, and Rain Dogs, the next classic that came right after that. And also, you know, for Tom Waits fans, if you're wanting to get into Tom Waits, it's probably only going to take you an album or two to decide if you're going to like him or not, because you may say, I just can't do this. But anyway, I think those are two of his later period. And then the last one, the last classic I think he made, that's just almost a perfect album, and that's Mule Variations. And it has, like I said before, my favorite, Come On Up to the House. But those are the 5 essentials. I think you can just stop there. If you're not the hugest Tom Waits fan, that would give you a good overview of his career and some of the best things he's ever done. Thanks, Elliott. Thanks, Glenn, and hope everyone is doing well. Bye.